So is everyone able to view my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. And before we move ahead, today's session, I gave an assignment in the previous class. Would anyone like to share their screen and show if they have done the assignment, and if they faced any doubts, we would be able to resolve them right away. So the assignment was this one, this page that I've created over here, and we wanted to replicate this page. So anyone who would come up and just share their screen for, I think 2 to 3 minutes it would take, and then we would proceed ahead. Okay. So anyone would like to come up proactively? Just put it in chat. Someone who wants to share the screen. I'll stop sharing my screen then. So should we call someone's name so that it would be better for everyone? So Shakib and Mustafa. I'm just taking random name, guys. Hamid. Anyone?
Do you want to share my screen?
So you've done this assignment, right? Have you completed this assignment?
Probably not, because I have some question, but if you want, I can share my screen.
So, you have questions related to this chat, right?
Yes, but I will share my screen.
Sure, I'll stop my screen share right now, and you can share your screen. Yeah. Yes, your screen is visible, right? Perfect.
So what I did experience most of these parts,
Mm-hmm.
the only thing I had question was when I do strong this line, it's not
Okay.
coming as a number 4. I did a lot, but it's not coming because I'm only like, we're allowed to use only one code at a time, because these are all coming in sequence. But if I want to strong this one, to hold it,
So
it's not coming as a number 4. One question.
so you can I'll tell you why this is happening. Just go to your line number 17, and you see that on line number 15 you've opened the ordered list chat, ordered list tag,
Right here.
but you have not closed that tag.
So OL has to be closed.
So after 17, just like yes, press enter and close this tag. Let's see if it works for us.
You mean OL?
/OL. The other one just came.
Right.
Delete the opening tag. Yes. Press save. And reload your page. See if it's working. Okay. You see that issue has been resolved.
Yeah, but it's not coming as a number 4. Like, you see that.
So it's because it's not the list item. You've added this particular information in strong tag, right?
Okay. That's what I'm saying.
This line number 19, you have to put it inside list tag. You write li tags over here.
Before
Yes.
strong, right? Okay.
Right. And place the closing tag after you've closed the strong tag.
Okay. So I mean, I have to cut this one.
This one, right? Perfect. Now place it after, no, not this one, the closing tag of strong, yes, right? And now place this line inside your ordered list, the 19th number line. You have to put it after 17th because it's a list item. It needs to come inside ordered list tag.
So you mean the text, right?
Not the text, the list item tag that you have just added, li tag. Yes. Just leave the HR tag. HR would just give the line over there. Just yes, this one.
Now I have to cut and place it behind this 18, right?
Yes. After 17th, you have to put this line.
Here.
Right. Okay. Control S, save your page. And just press the reload. Yes, perfect.
There we
It's
go.
coming as a numbered item now, fourth number.
Thank you. Got it.
So any other doubts?
This was my ability. I just did the line, the italic, the bold, the number, bullet point, different type of the H1, H2, H3.
Really amazing. Remember, you practiced like all the tags that we did last time. It's really amazing, and I'm telling you, the errors are bound to come. We are going to face errors while we are coding. The best part is just go step by step. See which part of your web page you're facing error, and that part is lying on which line number on the code editor. So to have more space, you can just minimize this file. I would say panel also. At the top left corner, you see file icon.
Yes. Here.
No, at the top left. Yes, below this one, the icon. Yes, press this one. So you have more space to code also now. So now whenever you need to open some file, click this icon and open the file. Otherwise, you can just minimize it like this and you have more space to code.
Awesome. All right. So now I stop my screen. You can ask somebody else. Thank you all.
Perfect, perfect. I think we can move ahead. You've done the assignment and I'm very happy about it. Let's move ahead and I'll quickly share my screen. Okay, perfect. We have Jamil with us, right?
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hi. Jamil, can you run this code on live server?
Yeah, I already ran it. Have you guys seen it or not?
No, we just see the your code editor screen. And guys, there is a mini map. You see this right side, you have a map that shows. Okay. You can remove this map also. This one. I'll tell
This
you
one?
how to remove this. Yeah. So just go to your, I think, preferences view. Let me check. Allow me just one moment. Yeah. Go to the view option at the top right, top left corner. You see three horizontal bars. Okay.
You see?
Yes, we do see this your live server page, and perfect. I think you've nailed it, Jamil. You've
Thank you.
perfect, perfect. You've completed all the lists, and you were able to nest the lists as well, right? List of
Yes.
internet services. Perfect.
Yeah.
I see you've nested the list, and you've used the break line element also under various network protocols. You've used BR tags and HR tags. Perfect. Nice.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And any doubts, any issues you faced, anything you want me to clarify regarding this assignment?
No, everything was good in the beginning. Yeah, so there was some issues, but like I just did like common sense and try. After like
Perfect.
couple hours, I was able to
Nice.
make it
Very
like
nice.
yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So anyone else would like to share? We would take the last one because then we would move on to the our today's sessions. Anyone else would like to share? Jamil, you can stop sharing your screen, and if anyone else wants to share, they can share. Okay. Perfect. Shakib, we would definitely see if we get time. We would definitely see, and you may share at the end if we get time during today's session. So guys, let's move on. And with today's session, I'll quickly share my screen. Okay. So everyone able to view my screen, just give me a yes in chat. Okay, nice. So this was the assignment that we did. and Jamil and most of us have done it, and I'm very happy that everyone practiced. Let's move on with today's topics. Let me pull up my presentation part, and I'll just see. Yeah, just a quick recap because we are attending session after a long break. Just a quick recap. So this was the basic structure of any document, HTML document. I'll just go through these lines. This is your version. This tells that your HTML document is HTML5. This is your root element. This is just a revision, guys. Very, very quick revision. Root element. Why this is called root element? Because everything, your entire content, as well as your meta tags, lies in between this. And for tags, we have two tags. One is your opening tag. This is your opening tag. And this is your closing tag. Every tag, you see this one. And how do we judge if it's an opening or closing? Anything that has / is a closing tag. Then comes your head. Head part contains all the metadata, all the extra information, as well as your title goes here, or your CSS file linking goes here, and other information as well. And the entire content comes under body. Entire content can be in form of your text, images, links, and so much more. So this was the basic structure. Moving ahead, let's see what a basic element looks like. Like this is particular tag, and inside the tag goes the content. What particular, in order to structure the content, how an element looks like. So very basic structure. We have started opening tag, we've started closing tag. How do we judge it? With / and the content goes over here. In between your opening and closing tag, the content goes over here. We have seen multiple tags in our previous assignments. Just a quick recap of those tags. These are your heading tags. How do we write them? H1 is the description of your tag name. Content comes over here. The content over here is this heading 1 comes over here, and then closing tag. Similarly, various types of heading tags are there, ranging from 1 to 6. The number 1 till 6 depicts the font size. 1 is the biggest font, 6 is the smallest font, and these are predefined fonts, so font sizes. And we can change this using CSS. We would be coming to that once we're done with HTML lectures. We would be starting with our CSS. Then comes your paragraph element. This is something more information at, like you have lines of text you want to put in and you want to provide some information. We write it in paragraph tag. It is written with P tag and the content comes over here. The content is right from this particular paragraph word till this particular period, I would say. And these are your horizontal rules. These lines are called horizontal rules, HR tag. And these are represented as singular tags and they are called self-closing tags. Why? Because they do not have any content to be displayed in between opening and closing tag. For all those tags which do not have any content to be displayed between them, we write them in this way, this HR tag with a /. They are self-closing tag. Then comes your ordered list. Ordered list has list items under it, and they are represented in terms of your bullet points. There is no particular order for it. Then, sorry, this is your unordered list. And these are your ordered list. Ordered lists have particular order, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And these all are your block level elements so far. Block level elements that take the width from left till extreme right on the page. That is, they take entire block. They give the structure to your page. And then comes your emphasized tag. These are your inline elements. Now, these are lying in between your paragraph tag. You see, a paragraph has been written, a single line paragraph, some words need to be, and within that, we have mentioned this tag, emphasized tag, and that italicizes this word. Similarly, you have strong keyword that shows this particular word has been bold. And then comes your BR tag, line break tag, which provides a line break from regards. And we wanted John in another line. This is how we write it. And this is we call the inline tags. We are placing a tag in between a block level element. This P tag, the paragraph element is a block level element. And in between, we are placing the line break elements, the but that represents a line should be, this word should start from a new line. Any doubts in this? This was the tags that we studied so far and how to write them. Before we move ahead, any doubts in this? Just put no doubts in chat if there are no doubts, and we'll move ahead. Anyone? So someone is asking, both lines become the block level. Which particular lines are you referring to? This one, the heading one? Okay, let me check. The BR tag, right? No, this is one paragraph. Now, this is one paragraph. This entire becomes one block level element. They are not different lines. They are parts of one paragraph. You see, like we have multiple lines over here, but those come only after the particular content has reached the end of the web page, and then it comes down. If we want to bring it down before it, we can do it with the help of line break tag. So this is one paragraph. This is one block level element in which the functionality has been provided with an inline element. The BR tag is an inline element and block level is your paragraph. Okay. So any other questions? Okay. So let's move ahead. The next topic that I want to discuss is your attributes. Now, what are attributes? So attributes are a part of your opening tag. Let's see the basic syntax of what an attribute is. So basic content we see, this is opening tag, this is closing tag, this is content, and this is element. Now there are times wherein we mention some information inside your opening tag, and that information is represented with the help of attributes. Now let's see the basic syntax of it. This is the basic syntax. I'll quickly erase this one. Right now, what are attributes? Attributes, this is tag over here, it's h1. If we write some information in form of like this attribute equals to value and then content and then closing tag, that is called attribute. What do they do? We would see many examples of it. What does attribute do for us? It provides additional information, functionality, or styling of the elements. And further, if we see, they're always specified in starting tag, your opening tag. Let me write it over here. Yeah, it provides additional information, functionality, or styling of the elements. So additional information, let me show you an example in our VS Code only. We would see, you see these things, this particular name over here, this content, this is coming inside your meta tag. This meta tag holds this particular information. This is attribute name, this is attribute value, this is attribute name, this is attribute value. Similarly over here, character set is an attribute and this is attribute value. So attribute is helping us provide additional information. And there are certain attributes that help us target the elements when we want to style them. We would see them in this attributes section only. So just a brief idea about what attribute is. So let's come back to the basic syntax. Just remember an attribute, we have some name written over here and we have some value, and value should always be in your double quotes. So there are certain attributes that do not need any value. We would be seeing them, but most of the attributes have to be specified with corresponding values. So let's write the basic information that we started right now. So always specified in starting tag, always come in name value pairs. Like this is not the actual, this can be attribute name. This can be anything. Like you've seen character set is an attribute. You've seen name as an attribute. You can see some other particular name of the attribute as well. We would see just right now a few examples. So an element can have multiple attributes, as we saw over here in our VS Code. Let me pull up that one. Like this particular tag is having multiple attributes. It has one attribute by the name of name itself. the other attribute has content. The other attribute over here is also representing content. It is HTTP equivalent. So this meta tag has multiple attributes. So a particular element can have multiple attributes. Attribute always comes in name value pair. They provides additional information and they are always specified in the opening tag. Over here, these are self-closing tags. That's why we have mentioned it over here. They do not have any specific opening or closing tag. That's why we mention it right over here. Suppose we want to mention something over here, then we would be able to write an attribute. If we want to mention an attribute, we have to mention it inside the opening tag. So let's see few examples before we, in order to make sure we understand what attribute is. I'll quickly make it more readable for us. Yeah. And let's see few examples in order to understand attribute. Yep. So let me pull up the other. So I've just written the code for the image that we just saw in the presentation regarding different headings, paragraphs, and so much more. So let's write a few lines of attribute for each particular element. So let's start with an attribute which comes for the ordered list. It would be easier to understand. Just focus on this part, this one. The ordered list that is numbered 1, 2, 3. If I want to change the number of these particular values, suppose I'll move to my ordered list part, this one, and I want to change the values 1, 2, 3. I want my list to start from, let's say, number 50. Then there's an attribute which we call it as start attribute. In this, we just write double quotes and we have to write the number from which we want the list to start. So if I write 50 and if I hit save, just focus over here. This one, just focus over here. The number has been changed 50, 51, 52. The best part is you only mentioned the starting number and then correspondingly every other item following under ordered list is numbered accordingly. Like first one would begin from 50, the other one would automatically get 51 and then 52. This is used only in ordered lists. Remember, this is only for ordered list. This is not for unordered list because unordered lists does not have numbers being mentioned in their list. So always remember, if you want to change the number of your list, we have an attribute which we call it as start attribute, and we have to mention the number in between the quotes. Then moving on to next attribute, let's see a few other examples. If you want to achieve same thing, we can do it with an attribute that comes for your li tag. Over here, I'll just remove this one as of now. I'll hit save. Automatically, my page goes back to 1, 2, 3, which is default list numbers. Now, if we want to do same thing, we can write a value attribute. So we can write number over here. Let's say I write 100. Now the first list would be numbered from 100 and correspondingly the other list would be numbered like 101, 102 and so on. If I hit save, see 100, 101, 102 and so on. Now this is also applicable to only ordered lists. So these are providing additional information, additional functionality, or we want to modify an element for certain aspects, we have attributes for them. Now, what happens if I write start attribute over here? Like if I write start attribute over here and I use my, let's say value attribute also. First, let's see if our start attribute is working. It's working 50, 51, 52. Now, if I write my value attribute over here, and if I hit save, my list would go to 100, 101, and 102. Now, why this is happening? It's because in our browsers, the code is being read from line to line. Initially, the start attribute gets applied, and then when we add something which I would say interface with the functionality of a particular attribute, and if it comes after the particular line, then that attribute overpowers the previous attribute. Here, the value attribute overrides the functionality of start attribute because they both are doing same thing. And when browser encounters something which do same thing at later stage of our code, it implements it and that particular thing overrides it. So whenever you're using both of these together, make sure you remove either this one or this one if you want to provide functionality. So let's remove our li tag as of now, the attribute for li tag. So if I hit save, my list starts from 50, 51, and 52. This was one of the attributes for your ordered list. We would see attributes for other elements also that we've written over here. Any questions regarding attribute, what an attribute, how we write it, different parts of attribute. So attribute provides additional information. How we write it in as a name value pair, name is written like this, and value is always written in quotes. It can be a number, Boolean, or anything. So it is always written in quotes, and it is always mentioned in opening tag. Most important, attributes are always written in opening tag. This is your opening tag for your ordered list. So can we do alphabet instead of numbers, like Safi asked? So it depends from attribute to attribute. Different attributes have different values. So here for numbering ordered list, we have numbered attributes. We would see other attributes also. So right now, this can differ. So for, like Safi asked, can we have alphabets? So let's see an example of alphabet. Very beautiful example. So let's come to our unordered list. So there's an attribute called type. And in this, we write what type of bullet points we want. You see over here, we have circular discs kind of bullet points. So if I want square, so let's see. So just see over here, just focus on this bullet points. If I hit save, my bullet points have been changed to square. I'll quickly just zoom in a little bit. These are square now. Now, if I remove this one, and if I hit save, they are back to disks. And now if I just go back and change it to square, just see these are. So we can have alphabets, we can have different text kind of values as well. So it depends from attribute to attribute, what kind of attribute has been designed for a particular element and what kind of values it can hold. So this was an interesting example for your unordered list. Now this type square is only for your unordered lists. This start is only for your ordered list. So the attributes which are very element specific, we call them local attributes. They are element specific. We cannot use them with every type of element. They are different type of attributes. The other attributes are your global attributes, which can be used with any element. So let's see an example. I'll zoom out this page. So let's see an example of a global attribute. So I'm moving to this paragraph tag. So if I write an attribute by the name of title and I have to mention some text information, let's say I write, this is definition of paragraph, let's say. Now, what does this attribute does for me? This title attribute, how does this help us? Now, whenever I will hover over this paragraph, a pop-up would appear that would tell me what this paragraph is about. You see this definition of paragraph? I'll just zoom a little bit more. Yeah, just see this definition of paragraph pop-up coming up. That is because of this title attribute. Now, if I hover over the other paragraph, it would not come. This is not coming. This is not coming. Nowhere, not on list and anywhere. So I can write it, this title attribute anywhere. I can write it over here also. Title equals to, let's say, unordered list. Now, if I hit save and I go over here, I would get this unordered list. There's a typo. Yeah. So if I go over here, I would get this unordered list. So this is a global attribute, or I would say general purpose attribute, which can be used with any element. So we are just trying to understand what attributes are doing for us, and there are different type of attributes for different elements. Those are element specific attributes, and there are certain attributes which are used for every element, which can be used with any element as per our need. So whenever we hover over this paragraph, automatically it would tell us that this paragraph is telling us that it holds the information regarding definition of paragraph. So this was one of your global attributes. So there's another attribute which was styling attribute earlier. one of the styling attributes. Now it has been obsolete. It is no longer used, but we can check it for our ease to see how it works. So it's called align attribute. So you see it has been marked as red. So the VS Code is automatically telling us that there is something not right with this attribute. Why? Because this attribute is no longer in use. However, it still works, but it is no longer in use in HTML5. The latest versions of HTML5, it is no longer in use. Let's see what it does for us. So it was used for the horizontal alignment of elements. So if you want an element in the left or in center or right, it can be done with this attribute. So you see this heading over here, it is at extreme left right now. So if I want to, let's say, write it in center, I'll just write center. I'll write center. And now if I hit save, my heading would go over here. Now, why this was discontinued in modern versions of HTML? Because this styling part, this alignment part has been given to CSS now. That CSS should handle it, not the HTML should handle this alignment part. So that's why it's no longer used in modern HTML versions. But we do have an option to test it. It still works, however, no longer used. Now, we said that an element can have multiple attributes. So let's see an example of it. Just focus on this horizontal rule, this one, this line you see. I'll show you how to add multiple attributes to it. So let's see some examples. There's an attribute called width. And now we have to mention the percentage or pixel values. So if I write 50%, and if I hit save, the width right now is 100% of my horizontal rule, right? From extreme left to extreme right. Now, if I hit save, just see the difference. The width reduces to 50%. The line is now 50%. Now it's in the center right now. I want to align it to left. I can use the align attribute and I can write it left. If I hit save, my line comes to the left with 50% width. Now I do not want this particular of, I would say, styling. I want some other shading, non-shading and other thing. So there's an attribute called no shade. So this shade that you see, this particular style, if I hit save, it automatically will be opaque. Now my line is opaque. It is different as compared to the previous one. So just see this one. Now this attribute does not need any value. It does not need any value. It's itself. If we write no shade, it automatically gets applied and it makes the line opaque. We can increase the size of this line as well. The width, I would say what we can, let's see how we can write it. So I can write it like as 5 pixels. So we would be coming to this pixels and percentage value in CSS. We would be studying definitely, but right now just understand an element can have multiple attributes. So if I hit save, just see this particular width is being represented like this. So what can we call this one? If this is length, so let's say height of line, we can increase with this. So if I write, let's say 10, so it would increase it more. It's increasing. So these are different attributes for a particular element, and they can be multiple attributes. Any questions regarding these attributes before we move ahead? Perfect. Now there are two more major attributes that I want us to know. They're very important attributes, heavily used, and they need to be understood very clearly. But before that, we need to understand how to implement CSS on our page. There are multiple ways to implement CSS. Right now, just understand, we're not starting CSS. We're just understanding one way of implementing CSS. And why we are doing it? Because the next attributes that we are going to study, they are used by CSS. And in order to understand those attributes, we need to know how CSS is implemented. So let's begin with the very basic CSS implementation. There are multiple ways. One of the ways is called embedded style sheets. So what are embedded style sheets? You would just see now, and other methods we would be learning when we will start our CSS sessions. Remember, this is not a CSS session as of now, just one way of implementing CSS, and that way is called embedded CSS, or we can call it as internal CSS. Let me show you through an image. So let's move ahead. This one, this embedded style sheet or internal CSS. Over here, just see there is a tag that we call style tag. There's an opening tag. So let me mark it down. So this is your opening tag. This is your closing tag. And this is where CSS rules are written in between these tags. And this tag, very important to understand, comes inside your head tags. So remember this information. Yeah. So style tag represents the implementation of CSS on an HTML page, and it is written inside the head tags, and the CSS is written within the style tag. So we'll see a few examples of it to understand how it's working and how the next two major attributes can be used in with the help of this implementation. Let me show you how particular CSS rule is written. I've like over here I've mentioned that CSS is written, but how do we actually write CSS in the style tag? So just see this image. In this style tag, we have written a selector, then begins your curly braces, and within curly braces you write the name of property and value. Now, what is this selector? The selector points to the respective element we want to style. For instance, you want to style paragraph, then there is a particular selector that would come to style paragraph. Then what is property? Property refers what kind of styling we want to provide. Do we want to increase font size? Do we want to change font color? Do we want to change the background of our paragraph? This is property. And value, your value is the range of options available under that particular category of property. For instance, you want to change font size. How many sizes are available? What is the range? That is mentioned inside value. And property is the category of styling you want to provide. If we take an example of paragraph, it can be your font size, it can be a font color, it can be a background image, background color of your paragraph, and so much more. And selector points to the particular element that we want to style. So just remember this syntax. There's a selector. We would see examples of it. We write curly braces, and within curly braces, there's a property name, then your colon, and then your value. And to terminate this line, we use semicolon. So let's see how we actually implement embedded CSS. We would open our VS Code and actually see how we are able to write it. So let me pull up my screen. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So I'll just decrease the size of it. Yeah. So any doubts so far before we move ahead to style tag, before we start implementing CSS, any doubts? Okay, so let's move ahead and let's see. So how do we implement style tag? First thing we need to remember, it is in your head section. And this is one way of implementing CSS. There are other ways also, but this is one way. Where do we do it? So in this, you just after your title tag, in your head section, after your title tag, you write style tag. And like this, you have made a space wherein you would write the CSS. This is where we are going to write basic codes of CSS. So this provides you an opening and closing style tag. And this tells the browser that when the styling is starting and where to stop. It tells the browser where the style starts and ends. So earlier, so if you start writing at some point of time, you might see an attribute called type, and it must have written something like this. It comes like text/CSS. So in older versions of code, this was written, but now in modern versions of HTML, the browsers understand automatically what style is, that it represents CSS. So we can skip this also. We can eliminate this part also, and we can keep this also. So it's your choice. But if you see something, some type attribute already written, so no, in earlier versions of HTML, it used to come. So I'll just save this file, and automatically my prettier formatter just eliminates all the extra spaces. So I'll just create some more space to understand. So now let's see how we actually write style inside this style tag, how we actually write CSS rule. We understood there is a selector, there is a property, and there is a value. Let's see how it actually works. Now within style tag, we first write the name of selector. One of the ways writing the name of element tag. So if I write P, this is one selector. Now it is targeting paragraph. Now the other syntax part was to write curly braces, and within curly braces, I have to write property and value. Now in this curly braces, I can have more than one CSS declaration. Let's see. So what could be the property? For instance, I want to change the color. Now this color property represents the text color. As of now, do not worry about the different property names of CSS because that is part of CSS. We would come to the text decoration lectures, then we would study different properties. So just understand, we are trying to just show over here is how basic CSS is applied in HTML. So one of the properties called color property that represents the text color. So let's say I want to write red color. So automatically you see I'm getting this uh, recommendations by VS Code that, okay, you've selected red color. Now the other part of syntax was to terminate this line, I have to write the semicolon. Now if I hit save, just see the all my paragraphs, this paragraph, this paragraph, this paragraph. You see, if I move over here, this is a paragraph tag, this is a paragraph tag, these three, 1, 2, 3. And over here at the bottom, we have 2 and 3 more paragraphs, these paragraphs. Everything turned to red, and that is because of this style. Now you see, this is your selector. You're selecting a particular element and you're providing a property called color, and you're providing a value for it. There are multiple value options. If you hover over it, you would get different textures of red also. This would be covered in CSS, but the basic syntax is this. Now, if you write multiple CSS values, how you do it? You just hit space over here. Make sure you do not write this in curly braces. Sometimes we write, you do not write this in double quotes, because sometimes we get confused with this name value pair and this property value pair, and we write the values in quotes only. So it won't work. You have to write it directly without any quotes. So for instance, the next one I want to increase the font size. So let's say I want to increase font size. You see there, if I write font, I automatically get so many recommendations, and you can select the font size. This is one way, this is a way of writing property. If you have two words, you mention it with the hyphen symbol in between them, and then you write the value. Now there are multiple values. So I can use the large value, larger value. So if I use, let's say, larger value, and if I hit save, the font size increased. So if I just zoom out to 100%, you see the font size is increasing. So I can show you with some other examples also. Let's say this one. And if I hit save, the font size increased for paragraph. So this is how we write multiple declarations. So let's write few other as well. I'll just change it to large. Sure. And let's write other declarations, few other declarations. Let's say I want to change the font weight. So font weight is basically the boldness. If you want to bold it. So let's say I want to write bolder. So I'll just hit save. Now the text is bold than before. So if I want to change the background color, I can write background color, and let's say I write dark blue. And if I hit save, just see. This is basic styling, very basic, just implementation of it. Just implementation, how we write CSS in HTML page only. We write a style tag, and within that style tag, we mention the selector. We start the curly braces. Within curly braces, we mention the property name, colon comes your property value and semicolon. Next line, same thing, property name, colon, property value, semicolon. All this would be studied again in CSS lectures, but right now understand this is how we implement. Now, one thing to notice here is when I am applying styling to my paragraph tag, it is getting applied to all the paragraphs on the page. Every paragraph is getting affected by this particular way of writing styles. Now, if I've applied it to paragraph tag, then all the paragraphs of the page are now blue and the text color is red, text is font, the text is bold and other styling. Now, this is where our next two major attributes come to help us. The one for which we started this style tag explanation, this is where the next two major attributes come to help us. They are also general purpose attributes. They are global attributes. They can be used with any element. Now, what are these attributes? These attributes are needed to target specific HTML element or a group of HTML elements. If I want to style something, if I want to provide it functionality using JavaScript and so on. So over here in all the paragraphs are being affected on this web page you see. But if I want to just style this paragraph, if I want to just style this last line, the signature line of my page, how to do it? For that, we have two major attributes, and these are used to target specific HTML elements. So I can target a single element or I can target a group of elements. For instance, I want to target only these three paragraphs to style. How to do it? That is done with the help of other two attributes. The first attribute is a class. It's called class. Let's understand it with a real life example. So I'll quickly pull up a beautiful image for us to understand it better. Yeah. So far we understand what is style tag, how basic styling is written, and why we are moving to the next major attribute. It's because in this particular way of writing selector, property, and value, we are targeting every element of that type. For instance, if I've written p tag, I'm targeting all the paragraphs. But if I want to target only few paragraphs, two paragraphs or three paragraphs out of all the available paragraphs on my web page, how to do it? So that's why we are moving to next attribute, which is called class. So any doubts so far before we move ahead to the next attribute? Any questions so far regarding the style tag, regarding the selector property and value, how we are writing it, how it is getting implemented? So this is very basic understanding as of now. One way of implementing CSS. We would be moving ahead in CSS lectures and covering what are different properties and values available to style your text. What are different properties and values available to style your images? What are different properties and values available to style your tables, forms, and so much more. But so far, any doubts in this? Okay, let's move ahead. So the next part that I want to take is this class attribute. If I want to target group of elements, for instance, out of 10 available paragraphs on my web page, I want to target only 3 or 4. How do we do it? That is done with the help of class attribute. Now, what is class attribute? Suppose there is a class of students, a very basic example. And as per the school rules, the students of those class have to wear a particular uniform. Now that rule get applied to each of the student belonging to that class. For instance, it's a class, kindergarten class, and there is a rule that students have to wear a particular dress or uniform. Now that rule gets applied to each of the student. Every student belonging to this class, this particular class section, they have to follow the rule and they have to dress up accordingly, right? Now, each student belonging to that class is now bound to wear that uniform as per the prescribed rules of the class. Similar is the case in HTML. We define class attribute to different elements or number of elements, and we apply the styling rules to the class attribute. Then all the styling rules applied to the class attribute has to be followed by the elements under that class. So what is a class attribute? If we just understand it with few punch points. So I'll just remove this one. Yeah. So it is used to target group of elements. Always remember, class is just like class of students, and every student needs to follow the rule of the class. They cannot have their own individual will to dress up in school. They are bound to dress up in a certain way as per the rules of that class. Now it is used to target group of elements, and rules applied to particular class attribute need to be followed by all the elements under that class. And classes are case sensitive. We would see this actually on our elements. Before we move ahead, how do we write class in HTML element? What is the syntax of it? So what is the syntax? We know how to write an attribute. This is the attribute name, attribute value, and this is the class attribute. We write it like class. We name it anything. It can be anything. You can name it title, you can name it subtitle, you can name it heading. This particular part is your will. You can name it anything. And now we are providing this class to these two elements, heading 1, heading 2. You can provide class to different elements also, like heading 1 and paragraph. And now any styling provided to this title class would be applied to these elements, H1 and H2. Other than this, no other element would get that styling. So how do we write it? We write the attribute name, attribute value. What is our attribute? Class attribute. It is mentioned in the opening tag, and we have the content and closing tag like the regular HTML syntax. So any doubts in this theoretical part of what a class is? It is used to represent group of elements, and any rule applied to that class is applied to all the group of elements belonging to that class. So any doubts in this before we actually see this happening on our VS Code? Okay, so yeah. So can we say class attribute is a type of inheritance? So Shakib, can you put more light on inheritance? Inheritance is a concept of object-oriented programming. Inheritance is something that you acquire properties from some parent element, and then the child elements are following those properties. Inheritance is something that there is some bigger box from which you're getting something and you're bound to follow that. So inheritance is altogether a different concept. Class is like a grouping together. For instance, let me just show you an example. For instance, we have H1, H2, H3, paragraph, your list items, or unordered list, ordered list, and so on. Now you want to provide a particular class to certain group of elements. For instance, you want to style H2 and paragraph in a certain way. You put it in a box, you name it some class attribute. Let's say text. I want it text. And now I put my H2 over here and paragraph over here. Styling provided to this text particular class, this class attribute, which has the value text, would only be applied to H2. They're not inheriting some properties from parent elements or some other part. They have been grouped together in a box. It's like grouping together for styling purposes, for JavaScript functionality purposes as well, and other aspects. So it's just grouping together in a box. Class is just like a virtual box in which we have grouped the elements to a certain category, and those can be used for styling purposes. Now, an element can have multiple classes. I'll show you an example that this H1 can have a title class and a text class. Now, all the styling provided to title as well as to text would be applied to H1. So we would see that. But it's not inheritance. It's altogether a virtual box used to group elements together so that they can be styled in a particular way. so that the styling can be applied to only those elements. Otherwise, if I use my element selector or like H2, if I write like this, then the styling would be provided to all the H2, not this particular H2, but all the H2. But if I have provided this class and I text it as per the class attribute, then only this particular H2 would be affected and not the other ones. So let's see few examples, then it would be more clear to us. Let's move on to our VS Code. Okay. Yeah. So this was the general way of styling. I'll simply comment this out. You remember we used to put HTML comments. We just select the entire content we want to comment, and then we can press Control and /. So now this particular line of code is there for our notes. It won't be implemented on our browser. If I hit save, all the styling would be gone. This is just for our reference now. Earlier, we were styling with this paragraph tag element. This is called type selector. This selector is called type selector. Now we are going to use class selector. How do we do it? Let's see. First, we would provide some class to our paragraph. So for instance, let me write a class to this paragraph. I'll just move on to paragraphs and I write class over here. And I want to highlight all the important paragraphs on my web page. So I'll just write class attribute equal to my double quotes. And within that, I would write any name I want to provide. So I'll write important. Let's write important, let's say para, or important info, like important info. Now I have certain paragraphs, like this is paragraph, and this paragraph says I'm fourth paragraph and I hold important information. So I want to provide class attribute to this paragraph also. I'll just copy this and I'll just go over to my fourth paragraph and write class. And so you see there is emphasize tag and strong tag over here. I want to highlight this also as an important info. I can provide it to this one also. So like this. So you see all the important texts on my page, I've provided them with the class. So if I hit save, nothing happens right now. Why? Because right now we are not accessing this class. We have just provided the attribute to the particular element. We are not accessing it inside the style tag. The styling has to come from this section of code. And right now we are not accessing this class. In order to access the elements using class attribute, we use a specific syntax. This syntax is called your dot and then class name. What is the class name that we provided? Important info. Important info. Now, if we are targeting some class attribute, we always have to start it with this dot, the period, and then your important info, and then the syntax goes like regular syntax, your curly braces, and then property and value name. Now, this squiggly line that you see, it's just because it's showing that your curly braces are still empty. There's nothing being written. So understand the syntax. This is type selector. When you write simple name of the element, and when we want to target the class attribute, the value part needs to be referred here after the dot. Whenever we write dot and the value name and then the curly braces, the browser will understand that, okay, this is coming from some class attributes. And all the styling written inside this class would be provided only to those elements in which we have mentioned the class. Like this paragraph, this paragraph goes over here. And if we come down this paragraph, or this emphasize tag and strong tags. So let's see, let's write something. Let's copy paste this styling only. And let's go over here. So that squiggly line is now gone. It's no more showing any error. Now, if I hit save, only those paragraphs have been targeted. Only those words have been targeted. You see, the entire paragraph has not been affected. Only the emphasized tag and only a bold tag has been impacted by this class attribute. So classes are not unique. Remember, we can provide same class to multiple elements. Now you can use class for a single element also, but for that we have the next attribute. But when you want to target a group of specific elements on your web page, you need to group them using the class attribute. And few properties that we need to remember: classes are not unique. Same class can be used for multiple elements. Class name is case sensitive. Let me show you an example. This paragraph you see, this fourth paragraph, if I just write instead of lowercase I to capital case I, this one, and if I hit save, the styling for this paragraph is gone. Classes are case sensitive. So always make sure. Earlier we studied HTML code is not case sensitive, but classes are case sensitive. So that's why it's always a good practice to follow single way of writing your code. So always write it in lowercase. And if you want to mention it with some uppercase, then you have to write separate lines of code for it. Like now, if I want to target that paragraph, how would I write it? Dot, and I have to write with the same name. What was it important? Info, right? Info. And I'll write same thing. And let's say, let me change background color to yellow. And if I hit save, only this paragraph is being affected. Why? Because this particular class belongs to this paragraph only. And we have seen it is case sensitive. If I move it back to lowercase I and hit save, my paragraph turns out to be of same styling that we have for other elements. Now this styling is gone. It is no more being this class is not targeting any element. So any doubts in this class attribute so far? We've seen it's not unique. Classes, multiple elements can have same class. Class name is case sensitive. So before we move ahead and see how to use multiple classes on same element, so any doubts in this?
Rahul, very clear.
Yeah.
I think
Perfect.
what I am thinking here, like it's a good idea to heads up and provide some examples of the CSS as well, to make our participants ready to have an idea about the CSS as well. Can you a little bit, dive deeper into the specific attributes for HTML? Or if you think it's not the time for it, then we will leave it for now. Because,
yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
only suggestion.
So right now, why I'm putting class and ID right now, because it would be easier to target the elements. And after this, we would be moving to hyperlinks, the anchor tags, how we connect web pages. So it's a very basic information. So we are not touching CSS in detail right now, because we would be building beautiful web pages using CSS. This is just very basic information. And regarding HTML attributes, they are very less, I would say, element specific attributes. More of them are global attributes only. So we would just finish this up and we would be moving to the next tag, the next hyperlink information. So I think it's very basic for our participants to just have an idea what a class and ID is.
Perfect. Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So let's see one example. If you want to provide multiple classes to same element. So for instance, you want to write, let's target some paragraph, or let's say, let's use this one over here. We have this important info. If I write, let's say I want to write, what can we do? Text class. Now, how do we write it? There has to be one quotation marks only, opening and closing tags. And within that, if you mention something after a space, After a space, it becomes the next class. This is one of the other class that has been provided to this particular paragraph. Earlier, we had only one class attribute, that is your important info. Now, if I target something, I'll just remove this one. And if I target something with the name text, and what styling can we provide? Let's see. Let's say I want to align it something. Let's say I'll just write align items, or does that apply? No, it won't. Let's take very basic styling. Color only. So I'll just write color and I'll mark it as black. Now, if I hit save and see, this particular styling has been applied to this paragraph. Why? Because our line, the code goes from top to bottom. Initially, important info was providing the color. Now the text is being provided. Now, if I move it above, I'll just move it above and see. If I hit save, earlier it would have been black. If I just remove the color from here, now everyone is getting black because by default it is black. So if I just change it to yellow for our ease. So see this. By default, the text color is black in every element, right? So over here, if I'm putting it red and save, so now it's red. So we would be coming to it, but remember that if we want to write multiple classes, how do we write it? Within same quotation marks, if you write something after a space, it becomes another class. It becomes another like a box in which this particular element also lies, and you want to target it using this class attribute, you target it with this dot element, right? So any questions regarding class attribute? Very basic information that we have studied so far. Class attribute targets group of elements and used for styling purposes majorly. Always mentioned as a name value pair. Value has to be any name of your choice. This particular can be anything. You can name it as your name also, but we always write it something meaningful so that if anyone else is reading your code, they can understand what particular class this means. So this was your class attribute. Any questions in this before we move ahead? Okay. So now we understand the difference, right? In general styling and in styling through class. I'll remove this one. Let's move ahead. This was for your group of elements. So now if I want to target one unique element, I'll just remove this one. If I want to target one unique element, how it happens, it comes through your ID attribute. If we take the same example, now every element has been styled uniquely. Every element, every particular student is getting dressed up uniquely. That comes through the ID element. ID element makes sure that every element is identified uniquely on the page. What is the syntax? Similar syntax like your HTML, like your CSS. Instead of class, we write ID attribute. And this is first paragraph and so on. So very simple, same class and ID on similar grounds. ID just targets a unique element. One element on the web page can have only one ID. It is case sensitive and it is used to target single element. Let's very quickly see one example of it. Let me write few lines of code for us. Just very simple. So how do we write it? Let's take our second paragraph, this one. So let's say I want to name it as ID as my, this is ID attribute. Now within my quotes, I would write the name. Let's name it as para2. This is para2. Now, if I hit save, nothing happens because I've not accessed this ID. Now to access the class attribute, we use dot before the name of the value. To access the ID attribute, we use hash symbol or pound symbol. I would say this hash and the name of your value name of the ID attribute. And similar, your curly braces and value, name value pair. So let's write some code. Let's italicize this line of code or this paragraph for us. If I want to italicize this, earlier I was using this emphasize tag. I want to use it through the CSS. It can happen through your font style. Sorry, font style and italic. You get multiple options automatically. If I hit save, this paragraph is italic now. I can add multiple options like font weight also. That increases the uh, uh, what do we say? Boldness. So it can be, you see this bold, bolder, lighter. I'll just see bolder. So this paragraph is bold now. So let's have some background color. Let's have orange. So this particular paragraph is only being targeted. So that is what ID is being used. So if you use same ID to other element, it might work also, but that is not recommended because we will face many issues while we would try to access the JavaScript functionality or the document fragmentation we would see in anchor tags and so much more. So HTML CSS is fault tolerant, I would say. So if you write the same ID over here, so it might work for your styling purposes. So if I hit save, it is working for your styling purposes, but that is not recommended. ID should always be used uniquely. And if you want to do something like this, use class. If you want to target group of elements, use class. If you want to target one unique element, then use ID. So any questions in this? So ID is case sensitive. Similar to your class attribute, ID is also case sensitive. So if you write something like over here, we've written this one. If I just change, so if I'll right now it's getting applied, right? Now if I increase the if I make it capital case, then it doesn't work. So Shakib is asking, can multiple IDs and classes be assigned to single element? Yes. A class, an element can have ID and class. So let's see an example of it very short, very quickly. But remember, never provide multiple IDs to a particular paragraph. So let's write it. Let's say I want to provide this class. I'll just copy this one and I'll provide it to my paragraph 2 also. So simple. One attribute, you just see at above. One attribute, space, another attribute. One attribute, space, another attribute. There is no comma or something being used to define attributes. So over here, just see. One attribute, ID, and then another attribute. Now if I hit save, so the text is being applied. Now comes a very important part. So there must be some conflicting. Let's remove this one. So from ID, we are just italicizing it and other styling is coming from class. So if I hit save, just see this text is italic. It has background color and color red. Color red, size, boldness, and background color is coming from your class, and italic part is coming from your IDE. ID. Now there is one very important concept that is called specificity. So specificity, let me show you an image. I have an image for that. So specificity, what is specificity? If you have written class, ID, and tag selector for a particular element, then all the styling in your ID would be given more preference than your class and then your tag. So just understand this very briefly right now. We would cover this topic in detail in CSS, but if you have mentioned ID, class, and your type selector, for instance, if I write this also, and let's just remove this one. I'll just put color option over here, different color option. Let's say yellow. And this is red. And this, let's put color option. Let's say green. Let's put green. Yeah. So now all these three have the green, the color option, and para 2 is over here. We are just seeing this paragraph, second paragraph. It has the class, it has the ID, and it has been targeted separately also. So if I hit save, my this paragraph goes green, second paragraph. Even if I change the order, even if I put it at top, even if I put it over here, then also if I hit save, just see I'm reloading my page, it is still green. Why? Because ID is given higher preference, then comes your class, and then comes your tag. This is specificity. So whenever you have multiple ID and classes mentioned to a single element, make sure the styling that you want to be applied definitely should come under ID part, then class, and then your type selector. So we would be covering this in CSS part, but right now we have covered two major attributes, class and ID. Class is used to target group of elements. ID is used to target one element uniquely. So any questions in this? Because in next lecture, we would be covering hyperlinks and your anchor tags. And then we would cover absolute and relative file path as well. So any questions in today's lecture about attributes? We have 5 minutes. Anyone have any questions? So this is for your. So the next, as Talash is suggesting divs, tables, and forms. That's correct. After we cover the anchor tag, the next tag we would cover tables, forms, and divs also. So if you want, we need to cover that first. I can do that. If like Talash, what do you suggest? Should we cover div, tables, and forms first? Yes, we have images as well, right? We have all the list of tags. So like I said, there can be multiple information on the page, like text, images, links, forms inputs, buttons, and tables. So far, we have covered the text part. The next one, we would cover the links part, and then we would come to the images one. Because images has an attribute called source attribute, and in that we need to mention some URL and or the file path. To understand that source attribute in image, we need to understand hyperlinks and anchor part, anchor tag as well. What is your relative path to access an image from your storage device, or what is a way to access an image from online? Online, you have an image. So for instance, I'll just open some image over here. So let's say I'll open computer image. So now if I open this, there are multiple ways. Either I can store it on my device and then access it. There comes the relative file path. And if I want to access it directly, there's a way to copy the image address. This image address provides you a URL. For instance, if I write it just over here and paste it, this is the URL part. So this is the URL. This, do you see this particular URL? We need to mention this. How we mention it in the source attribute, we would be studying that after hyperlinks. How we create hyperlinks using HTML under anchor tag. After that, we would be coming to images part. And when we are done with the major tags like your text, links, images, tables, then we would come to the divs and spans, how we group all these together, how we structure our page. So that is going to be part of our next lectures, right?
Okay, good. Yeah. So what we mean is that at the end of the day, before January 9, our participants should be able to, create a fancy HTML page. So what we are actually looking in at the end of the day is that before we start, everyone should have basic knowledge and should know the fundamentals. I mean, what I see here is like, let's compare ourselves with last week. Um, when Rahul provided us with some examples when we were setting up our environment, you guys remember, right? And we have been looking in all these elements and attributes, and it was like, oh, what's going on? I don't know what is this green and what are these, what the style, what is this? So, but today at least we have an idea about a couple of things. So I think it's a steady, slow move, but for now, I think it's good. We will be moving faster later on, but for now, I mean, that's good. That's a very good start. Rahul, if you can provide us an assignment as well, so our participants will prepare something for tomorrow. Do share it, and then I will pass it on.
So I would say as of now, just study attributes. I would prepare a beautiful assignment today, which would cover the tomorrow's topic as well. So once we're done with the anchor tag, I would provide the assignment tomorrow. And today, just study the attributes that we have covered. What are the major attributes that we have studied? Just go through the ID classes and just study a little bit about anchor tag. It's anchor, ANCHOR, as an anchor tag. So I'll just write it over here. It's anchor tag. Anchor tag. Just study about it. We would be studying this tomorrow, and I would create an assignment for us, a beautiful example, beautiful page that we all can practice, and I would provide it tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, I think wasted a little bit of time today, but that's fine. Everything will be all right because we have to. 90 minutes is very tight for us. So I would request our participants to, be on time, even not consume that 5 minutes as well. So if we give that 5 minutes to our recap, then we will still have 85 minutes. 5 minutes at the end for recap again, and then we will have 80 minutes. So please be on time. And from tomorrow onward, when we start 5 sharp, Rahul will jump in and start the recap. So within 5 minutes, if some of you are having no issue with the recaps, you can join in 5 minutes, or you can join on time. Anyway, thank you very much, Rahul. It was amazing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any questions, any suggestions? No questions, no suggestions. Please, put a little bit of accelerator into your puddle. Take a look into these into the video as well. And as I also shared a attribute in elements source, a reference to you guys. Take a look into it if you have time. With that, if no questions, then let's conclude our class for today.
Thank you, everyone.
See you all. Bye.